It is 8 o'clock in the morning. For the thousands of workers walking towards the Rana Plaza, this is just another start to a long, exhausting workday. But they shouldn't be here. Just 24 hours earlier, deep cracks had appeared in the concrete pillar holding up this massive 8-story building in Bangladesh. At about 9 a.m., a deep, powerful vibration begins to shake the building. And within seconds, the walls blow outward, the ceiling drops. In less than 2 minutes, the entire 8-story building completely collapses, trapping thousands of people inside a mountain of broken concrete and twisted metal. It is about to become the deadliest structural failure in modern human history. To understand why thousands of people were packed in this dangerous building on that April morning, we first have to understand the global economic engine that put them there. Rana Plaza was not just a local tragedy. It was the result of a worldwide system known as fast fashion. In the decades leading up to 2013, the clothing industry completely changed. Consumers in wealthy countries wanted trendy, fashionable clothes, but they wanted them to be incredibly cheap. They also wanted new styles in the store every few weeks, rather than every few months. To sell a t-shirt for $5 and still make a massive profit, global clothing brands had to find a new way to make their clothes for almost nothing. To achieve these rock-bottom prices, major Western labels moved their manufacturing away from their own countries. They looked for places where labor was very cheap and where safety rules were either weak or completely ignored. Bangladesh quickly became one of the biggest clothing exporters in the world. The fast fashion industry brought billions of dollars into the country, but it also created a system of extreme pressure. Global brands demand a huge amount of clothing to be made in impossibly short amount of time. If a factory in Bangladesh could not finish the order on time, the Western brand would simply cancel the contract and give the work to someone else. This extreme pressure created a hidden system called subcontracting. A major famous clothing brand would hire a large, officially approved factory to make their shirts. But when that factory realized they could not finish the huge order on time, they would secretly send the extra work to smaller, unapproved, and often unsafe factories. The global brands at the top of the chain usually did not ask questions. This system created a convenient shield. The famous brands would sell cheap clothes and claim they had no idea their products were being made in dangerous, hidden sweatshops. Rana Plaza was one of those hidden places. So, what exactly was Rana Plaza? The building was owned by a man named Sohail Rana, a local politician with a lot of money and influence. He used his political connections to get lands and build his plaza. But from the very beginning, the structure was a dangerous lie. When the building was first designed and approved by the local government, it was only permitted to be a 4-story building. Furthermore, it was only approved for commercial use. This meant it was designed to hold ground floor shops, small banks, and light office work. A building designed for offices only need to support the weight of people, desks, and some basic equipment. However, driven by the huge amount of money flowing in from the garment industry, Sohail Rana ignored the original plans. Without getting any proper permits or engineering safety checks, he illegally added 4 more floors to the top of the building, making it 8 stories high, with 9th floor under construction. But adding illegal floors was only the first deadly mistake. The second mistake was completely changing what the building was used for. Rana rented the upper floors to 5 different garment factories. Almost overnight, a building meant for quiet offices was transformed into a heavy industrial complex. The structural columns and the foundation of Rana Plaza were never engineered to carry this kind of weight. The upper floors were now packed with thousands of workers, mountains of heavy fabric, and endless rows of heavy industrial sewing machines. Worst of all, the factory owner installed large, heavy-duty diesel generators on the top floors to back up the electricity of the building, which ran out frequently. A generator does not just add weight, it also shakes. The building was simply not built to handle the heavy equipment combined with the constant movement and vibration of the machines. The building was a ticking time bomb, and the clock was running out fast. Disasters of this size rarely happen without warning. Usually, a building will give clear signs that it is failing long before it actually falls down. Rana Plaza gave everyone a loud and clear warning the day before the disaster. On Tuesday, April 23rd, the workers were busy at their sewing machines when they heard a loud explosion sound inside the building. It wasn't a bomb. It was the sound of the building's support column cracking under the extreme pressure. Deep visible cracks appeared in the concrete pillars on the lower floors. The damage was so obvious and so frightening that the local news even sent a camera crew to film the giant crack in the walls. The building was immediately evacuated. An engineer was called to inspect the damage, and he told the building owner that the building was unsafe and should be closed down immediately until a full safety inspection could be done. The businesses on the lower floors, the shops and the bank listened to the warning. They sent their employees home and locked their doors. They did not return the next day. But on the upper floors, the garment factory managers faced a different reality. They were under extreme pressure from the global fast fashion brands to finish their clothing order on time. If they stopped working to wait for the building repairs, they would miss their shipping deadlines. They would lose their contracts, lose massive amount of money, and potentially ruin their businesses. For the factory owners, the profit was more important than the risk. That evening, they made the fatal decision. They told their workers that the building was perfectly safe. They said the cracks were just minor damage to the plaster, not a structural failure. The factory managers told the thousands of poor garment workers that if they did not show up for work the next morning, they would be fired and they would lose a whole month of pay. For people who are already struggling to feed their families, losing a month's salary was not an option. They were forced to choose between risking their life in a broken building or letting their family starve. Driven by fear and desperate for their pay, the workers walked back into the cracked building on the morning of April 24th. At 8:45 a.m., as the workers were sewing, the local power grid failed. It was the final trigger. To keep the factories running, the managers turned on the 4 heavy diesel generators located on the upper floors. When these massive engines turned on, they began to violently vibrate. This vibration traveled down through the floors and into the already broken concrete support columns. The rhythmic shaking of the heavy generators, combined with the constant pounding of thousands of sewing machines all running at the same time, created a wave of energy that the cracked columns could not absorb. It is believed that the collapse first propagated on the 7th floor, specifically at a southwest corner column located directly underneath one or more of these electrical generators. Built with cheap substandard materials and cheap iron rods, this specific column finally reached its breaking point. The steel inside snapped, and the concrete shattered into dust. As this 7th floor collapsed, it instantly overloaded the floor below it, leading to a catastrophic chain reaction that trapped several thousand people inside a twisted network of concrete and steel. This progressive failure caused the building to suffer what engineers call a pancake collapse. Because the building was carrying far too much weight on its illegal upper floors, gravity simply pulled the entire structure straight down. The top floor fell onto the floor below it. That combined weight then smashed into the next floor and so on. The heavy concrete slabs slammed down on top of each other, crushing everything and everyone caught in between them. In less than 90 seconds, the 8-story building was flattened into a pile of rubble that was only 3 stories high. For a few moments after the collapse, a huge cloud of thick gray dust covered the neighborhood. When the dust finally began to clear, the true horror of what had just happened became visible. Where a massive concrete building had stood just 2 minutes earlier, there was now only a twisted mountain of broken concrete slabs, tangled steel bars, and thousands of trapped people. The rescue effort began immediately, but it was chaotic and completely overwhelming. Local people, shopkeepers, and students rushed to the piles to help. Because they did not have heavy rescue equipment right away, people began digging through the concrete with their bare hands. They used simple tools to try and cut through the metal bars to reach the worker trapped in the dark gap between the collapsed floors. The cries for help coming from deep inside the rubble were heartbreaking. Some workers were trapped in tiny pockets of air, pinned down by heavy sewing machines or concrete beams. Rescuers had to make impossible choices, sometimes have to perform emergency amputation with simple tools just to pull a worker out of the crushing weight. The rescue operation lasted for nearly 3 weeks. When it was finally over, the number shocked the world. 1,134 people had lost their life in the collapse. Another 2,500 people were pulled from the rubble alive, but many of them had life-changing injuries, missing limbs, or severe psychological trauma. It was the deadliest disaster in the history of the garment industry. As the rescuers dug through the concrete to find survivors, they also uncovered the hidden truth of the global supply chain. Mixed into the dirt, blood, and broken concrete were thousands of colorful clothing tags. These were not tags from unknown local brands. These were tags from some of the biggest and most famous retail stores in the world. Labels for Primark, Benetton, Mango, and suppliers for Walmart were pulled out of the wreckage. The physical evidence was undeniable. The cheap, fashionable clothes hanging in bright, air-conditioned shopping malls in London, Paris, and New York were being manufactured in this deadly, illegal death trap. The pictures of these brand labels, mixed with the rubble of a collapsed building, went viral around the world. The global brand could no longer claim they did not know where their clothes were being made. The world was finally forced to see the true cost of a $5 t-shirt. The anger following the collapse was massive, both inside Bangladesh and around the world. People demanded accountability. How could a building with visible cracks be allowed to stay open? Who was to blame for the death of over 1,000 innocent workers? The authorities immediately went after the building owner, Sohail Rana. Knowing he was in trouble, Rana tried to flee the country and escape across the border into India. However, he was tracked down and arrested by a special police team just days after the collapse. He became the most hated man in Bangladesh. Rana, along with the factory owners who forced the workers back into the building, were arrested and charged with murder and criminal negligence. But arresting the local owners was only part of the solution. The entire global system needed to change. Public pressure forced the big Western clothing brands to finally take responsibility for the factories they used. This led to a historic agreement known as the Accord on Fire and Building Safety in Bangladesh. For the first time, over 200 major global brands agreed to a legally binding system. Under this agreement, independent engineers were sent to inspect thousands of garment factories across Bangladesh. They checked for structural strength, proper fire escape, and safe electrical wiring. If a factory was found to be dangerous, the global brands agreed to stop doing business with them until the building was fixed. The tragedy of Rana Plaza was not a natural disaster. It was not an unpredictable earthquake or a sudden storm. It was a completely preventable catastrophe built on human greed. Today, the space where Rana Plaza once stood is an empty lot. A memorial sits near the site, remembering the 1,134 people who went to work one morning and never came home. The disaster changed the clothing industry forever, forcing it to look in the mirror and acknowledge its deadly flaws. It proved that in the modern world, extreme profit often comes at a terrible human cost, and that no piece of clothing is ever truly cheap. Thank you for watching.